Hello, this is Dr. Rosie Kuhn, and this podcast series is called Spiritual Immersion, Taking the Plunge. And the intention of these podcasts is to support and empower you to be present to the unfolding and the self-discovery of you that's occurring all the time. And that the courage to stay present to, in this moment, to what you're experiencing, what you're noticing, and how you are being in this moment. We quite often want to be able to control the future. We have this need to try and control the conditions and the outcome of life, when the fact is, you've heard this and you've probably said it yourself, is we can't control the outcome. We can't control the future. All we can do is be present to what is in this moment. It's really, really, really difficult work because our paradigm, our consensus reality, is constantly focused on the past and the future. We're always looking at, especially now with political times and the pandemic times, it's like, this is how it used to be, or this is what it was, in the last pandemic. This is what it was, and this is how people were, and we're constantly comparing ourselves to the past. And then there's the part that says, here's what's going to happen. Here's the projections. Here's what we should do to make sure that doesn't happen. Here's what we should do to make sure that happens. So we're constantly either in the past or in the future, because we're trained to think that way. And what we're doing now for those people who can no longer tolerate the level of anxiety about the past or the future. They can't tolerate the level of suffering that they're experiencing, and that perhaps they're on the verge of a disease or condition, or they're in the midst of that. They want a way out of that. They want to be able to focus on healing themselves and bringing themselves to wholeness. That's what it's about. We can only do that one moment at a time. That moment exists right now. As scary as it is, that's the truth. And one of the biggest practices is to notice the patternings of, I'm saying patternings, or the patterns of watching our thoughts attending to the past, or they're attending to the future. We're attending to the ways that we're trying to control the outcome of a situation. In the previous podcasts, I mentioned, one of the previous ones, I mentioned that I had an argument with my son, and I kept repeating in my head a conversation I wanted to have with him. And the whole point of that was I had a need to try and control the outcome of the situation. And as long as we're trying to control, we're not present, because we're manipulating, we're being strategic, we're practicing, we're rehearsing, we're thinking about the possibilities. And all of that might be necessary at some point, but when we get so caught up into it, we don't even know we're doing it. That's a habit or a pattern that we might want to look at, because that creates suffering. That creates anxiety, that creates frustration or disappointment. If I'm rehearsing in my head a conversation I might have with my son someday, I'm creating all kinds of drama and trauma in my life that doesn't exist right now. And if the situation is what it is, and we may never talk again, I have to be with that. That's a human moment. I have to be with the truth of that. And most of us don't want to do that. Most of us want to say, yeah, but if I hope, if I stay in hope, if I stay in imagining the best, that'll happen. It's like, yeah, well, we don't know that. But what we do know is, in this moment, if I am present to the patternings that keep me in a state of suffering and frustration, disappointment, despair, then I'm constantly caught in the loop of that pattern. So one of the things I want to address today is that as we're working, as we're being present to our life, as we're beginning to begin to be greater sleuths, more like a huge, a detective or a sleuth that needs to attend to what are the clues here that are available to me that will show me the cause of the situation, show me the source of the problem, if you will, or the condition that's showing up. So the sleuth, I can't remember his name right now, but the big great detective, they're trying to find who done it, who was the person who did the crime, and so he keeps looking at different clues that keep showing up. And so this is a big part of this process that we're practicing and training ourselves, is to become better and better sleuths at what's occurring in our life. So initially, in the beginning, it's really easy to ignore it all and just say, I'm suffering. This is really hard. I'm just suffering. It's my job, or it's my partnership, or it's my children, or it's the money, or it's my health. It's like we're pointing to something outside ourselves. That's the source of our suffering. If my husband had been different, if my money situation had been, if my parents were different, all of those things, I would be a better person. Well, it didn't turn out that way. So when we are initially saying they are the source and cause of my suffering, that's where most of us start. And slowly but surely, we begin to look within ourselves for how we are responsible for creating the reality around us, how I'm responsible for creating the conditions and the circumstances of my life. And the more that I do that, I become more conscious of being 100% responsible for everything that's showing up in my life, And that allows me two things. It allows me to see why I'm not able to manifest greater abundance in terms of wealth. I can see what my patterns are that's not allowing me to move forward in my life in so many ways. So it's that place of, I can see that, and then I begin to see what's the source of that thing that keeps me stuck. Again, I'm sleuthing. What is that? And sometimes it's not just one thing. Quite often I've gotten, it's like, okay, this is either, quite often in our life, if we see a therapist, we source the source of our suffering is usually our parents or our family life. And then if you're working with a spiritual coach or a spiritual therapist or someone or a minister, we're looking potentially at past lives or ancestral lives or parallel lives. We're now in a world where we begin to acknowledge the multi-universe, the multiverse, and that the source of our conditionings is not maybe just one place or one thing, but it could be sourced in many places. That's all showing up in this one time, in this one opportunity, in this one moment. And so to source into and sleuth into, what is this? What's making me, or what's keeping me stuck or frozen or unable to move to the next level? And little by little, as I stay in the question, it's not about what the world is doing. It's more and more about what I'm doing, and how the world around me is only a reflection and a projection of what's happening inside of me. And that projection is that when I grew up as a therapist and psychologist, the word projection is something that's like, part of the language of psychology. But I couldn't understand it until just recently, that what that means is I have these thoughts about myself. I have these beliefs about myself that are so ingrained and so whatever, I don't even know it exists within me. I just see that it's a reflection in the world. But as I begin to own responsibility over and over and over again for what the reflection is, then I become more mindful of, how am I carrying that thought? How am I carrying that in myself? So for instance, I would like to have more visibility in the world. I would like to be more utilized in the world. I would like to be more available to the world. And what's the intention of that? So that I could be more of service to the world. But there's also a part of me that says, I don't want to be, I don't want to be a service to the world. I want my own time. I want my own, I just want to take care of myself and be with my dog and be on my property and paint and have a good time. I don't want to be responsible for a bunch of other people. So the world is reflecting to me because I'm not hearing from Oprah and I'm not hearing from, major radio broadcasts. I'm not hearing from people saying, hey, we want you on our show, or TED Talks, inviting me to say, hey, we want you to come talk. I'm not getting those invitations. And so I make it about them, but now I see it's really about me. And I have to begin to dig my way out of that reality so that the world around me begins to reflect the world of being seen, being visible, being available, being utilized, being invited to participate, and being prosperous. So I begin to, but I have to look very, very deeply at what's going on inside of me so that I can see those patterns. So quite often, I've been a therapist. I was a therapist for about 20 years, and then the last 40, I'm almost 70, so that's almost 40 years. Last 20 years, I've been a coach. And so I do a lot of coaching with myself, but I also utilize those people who I know can help me get to these, the source of things that I can't get to by myself. So I really encourage you to hire somebody and work with a thinking partner and a partner that can support you through this process so you can see how responsible you are for what's showing up. And sometimes people go, oh God, I don't want to be responsible for what's showing up. But if we're not responsible for what's showing up, we cannot take responsibility. We can't empower ourselves to have things be the way we want them. If I don't take responsibility for making and creating the reality I have currently, I can't take the next step to manifest the reality that I really want, where I'm really in service to the world, making a difference, empowering people one at a time, bringing them to fulfillment of their human spirit. That's my work in the world. But if I ignore those parts of me that doesn't want to do that, I'll never be able to really be in the fulfillment of my purpose. So that's pretty much it for today. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email me at rosie@theparadigmshifts.com. Sometimes that email doesn't work, so if you don't hear back from me, you can try the email rosie@orcasonline.com, ORCASO online.com. Or just check me out at my website, theparadigmshifts.com. You'll find blogs, videos, books, all kinds of things that could be supportive for you. All right. Big hugs, blessings to you, and bye for now.